A Monsters Expedition is a sokoban-style block-pushing puzzle game of sorts, and that is probably enough to put a lot of people off from ever thinking about playing or buying it, because sokoban-style games feel like they've been done to death. How much more can you get out of the concept of moving objects around awkward spaces by pushing and never pulling? And yet still, every so often one comes out that has such a strong, unique take on what a sokoban puzzle can be, or such a high level of polish surrounding more traditional sokoban gameplay, that they are still absolutely worth playing, and I think A Monsters Expedition deserves adding to that list. A Monsters Expedition takes place on a bunch of small islands, and your goal as a monster is to travel from island to island to explore a vast archipelago, check out the quaint and inaccurate exhibits of English human culture, and eventually, after enough exploring, reach the ferry home. But while this archipelago is flush with random human paraphernalia, it is somewhat lacking in infrastructure, and so to move from island to island, you have to build bridges by knocking over trees and pushing them into the water. The puzzles in A Monsters Expedition are like a simplified version of those in Stephen's Sausage Roll. The islands are all based on a grid, and a tree trunk takes up a single tile on the grid, but it has a distinct length and width. When pushed parallel to its length, your monster will flip the trunk end over end like a caper toss, but when pushed from the side, a log will roll and keep rolling until it's stopped by a rock, another log, a tree stump, or it falls into the sea. When a log does fall into the sea, it floats and you can walk on it, but only along the length. So for a log to become a usable bridge, it must connect two pieces of land together from end to end. But if you drop two logs onto the same tile of water, you can bind them together into a platform that you can walk on in any direction. Or rather, they bind themselves into a platform for you. Thanks, logs. Thogs. A short while into the game, you start to find a second, taller type of tree as well. This tree is 2 tiles in length, rolls when pushed from the side, but instead of being flipped over when pushed from an end, a taller log can only be shunted forward. As you play with these mechanics, you gain a better understanding of their quirks and features, like how when a short log is flipped, it goes up onto an end, meaning you can walk around to a different side and push it over, essentially rotating the log by 90 degrees. But because the taller trees don't get flipped over, there's no way of changing their orientation after you first push them down. Or like when you push a tree over, you can hop up onto the tree stump to walk along the log to get around to a different side. But this also means that you can't push a tree over and then keep flipping it forward. So if you want to move a tree to the right, for example, you might have to push it up or down first and then roll it. As you find yourself utilising these quirks or having potential solutions get blocked by them, you develop a better overall understanding of how the logs can move, how your character moves in relation to them, and what sort of positions you should be looking for to try to make things happen. A puzzle that takes a bit of time earlier in the game wouldn't necessarily feel simple later on, but would feel smoother to solve as you have a better grasp on what does and does not work in this world. I enjoyed the gameplay in A Monsters Expedition, but individually these aren't the best puzzles I've seen in a sokoban game. They're good, but in terms of complexity and variety, they aren't close to being up there with something like Stephen's Sausage Roll that I mentioned earlier. But that's also kind of the point. Most of the puzzles in this game, I would say, are fairly easy to moderate in difficulty, though obviously that is subjective and will vary from player to player. And the puzzles you're solving after 2 hours aren't notably different in concept from those you solved in the first 20 minutes. But A Monsters Expedition isn't about overcoming hardcore, challenging puzzles. It's about enjoying the act of solving puzzles in a really pleasant world. A Monsters Expedition is like a cup of hot chocolate as a puzzle game. It is designed to be relaxing. A good part of that comes from the game's art. It looks like a great place to be, soft green grass surrounded by clear blue water with sunny skies overhead. The fat egg-like monster has really cute little animations for moving around and pushing over trees, but also some other little details that add to its character. When you accidentally try to walk into a rock, the monster gives it a little kick to show that it's not going to move. Or if you walk off the edge of an island, it sits down with its feet in the water as though it's having a short break. Better than that though is the fantastic soundtrack that's full of peaceful and relaxing vibes. It's composed by Ellie Rainsbury, who also made the soundtrack for Wilmot's Warehouse, which I haven't made a video about yet, maybe, but I did really enjoy. The sound effects in A Monster's Expedition show a great level of polish too, in particular the soft hi-hat that plays whenever you press the undo button. But the music and art have to work with the gameplay, and A Monster's Expedition is designed so that the puzzle-solving experience is also relaxing. As I said before, I don't think many of the puzzles in this game are overly difficult, leading to smoother sailing overall. There's also a generous undo feature that allows you to go back move by move with seemingly no limit if you've made a mistake. But on top of that, A Monster's Expedition's gorgeous archipelago doesn't have to be explored in any particular order. Islands might have one or two branching paths if you solve the puzzles in a different way, and so you progress in more of a sprawling open world fashion. Anytime you get stuck on one puzzle, you can probably jump in a nearby Royal Mail post box and go in a different direction. It's a nice design that lets you keep solving puzzles and exploring without losing too much momentum. Some islands don't even have a puzzle. Every so often you'll find an island with a tree already perfectly lined up for you to push it over and walk straight across, giving these little moments where you uncover 1, 2, 3 islands in a row as a short rewarding break before the next puzzle. And just moving onto another island feels like a reward. This is a game where you want to see more of it. Travelling from island to island and pushing out through the fog can't help but give the game a sense of exploration and adventure. It wasn't just that the game was pretty or had nice music, even from the very first moments it was a game that I really wanted to explore. The moment I was 90% sure I was going to like this game, and the moment that I realised the sense of adventure was both deliberate and integral, was a moment just 10 minutes into the game. Upon reaching one particular island, I could see a windmill on another island just above me. My island was split in half by rocks, 2 trees on my side and a single tree on the other. I needed to build a bridge to get across, but I realised I actually needed to build a wooden platform so that not only could I walk across from right to left, but I would also be able to walk upwards to push a log to become a bridge at the top of the island. I knocked down the 2 trees on my side and rolled them into the gap to form a platform. I walked across and pushed the 3rd tree down and lined it up to build the bridge. Then I moved onto the platform to push the log north. And instead, I pushed myself south. The platforms aren't just platforms, they're rafts. You are sailing through the mist to find new lands. And the game's title comes up on the screen as if to say, this is the real beginning. The logs and the puzzles are what the game has, but what the game is about is this curious adventure, this monster's expedition. There is one little caveat, however. I said that I don't think many of the puzzles in this game are overly difficult, which obviously implies that there were a few that initially, at the very least, had me stumped. The game's idea is that if you're stuck, simply head in another direction, and that works to an extent. But there were definitely times when I could not easily work out what other directions I even had available to go in, or when I did find another possible direction, it was just a different tricky puzzle that I'd also put off for later, meaning I was going to have to buckle down and just stare at my screen until I solved one of them. So A Monster's Expedition can't maintain that gentle and calming tone indefinitely, and it's not ideal that such an otherwise relaxing game has these slightly frustrating moments that in any other puzzle game would just be normal, but I also don't know how it could really avoid them while still being an interesting puzzle game. Overall though, I really enjoyed A Monster's Expedition. The puzzles are solid, if unspectacular for someone who has played a lot of sokoban games, but the atmosphere is superb, and every time I sat down to play this one, I really didn't want to stop. If you're a fan of puzzle games or want something with a cute and wholesome theme, then A Monster's Expedition is definitely worth checking out. But I understand some of you might be saying, but what if I don't want a nice theme, pretty art, elements of humour, a controllable character with a personality or a sense of adventure, and I just want an isometric third-person puzzle game set in an archipelago where I have to travel from island to island by constructing bridges through sokoban-style puzzles, but where I can still occasionally find strange objects with an unusual bit of text underneath them, and that still has interesting puzzles. I get it. It's a common conundrum that a lot of people face, but luckily, I've got your back. Another puzzle game that I'm a big fan of that weirdly fits all of those criteria is Pontibus, and because these two games had so many similarities, I've released both reviews at the same time, so if you're interested in that game, it's on the screen right now. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.